Picture the person next door, the one who plays music too loud, the one whose dog won't stop barking at 6 a.m., the one who parks in your spot again. You felt that flash of irritation. You've told yourself to let it go. But here's the strange part. Your ancestors felt that exact same flash 40,000 years ago standing outside a cave. You assume conflict like this is a modern invention, something born from crowded apartment buildings and thin walls. It isn't. Your brain evolved to notice, judge, and quietly resent the people living closest to you. Long before property lines existed, humans were drawing invisible ones anyway. Why would evolution bother building that instinct in the first place? Start with the size of your world. Not the planet, your actual social world, the number of people your brain can hold real relationships with at once. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar studied primate brain size against group size and found a consistent number for humans, somewhere around 150. That's not a rule. It's a ceiling. Beyond it, your brain starts losing track of who owes who a favor, who insulted who's trustworthy, and who isn't. Your ancient neighbors lived inside that ceiling, every single day. A hunter-gatherer band wasn't a city of strangers passing each other in silence. It was a tight web of maybe 30 to 50 people, all of whom knew your face, your reputation, and your business. There was no anonymity to hide behind. No moving to a new neighborhood to escape a bad first impression. You were stuck with these people for years, possibly for life. That changes everything about how conflict works. Imagine you can't simply ignore a rude neighbor. Imagine you have to hunt beside him next week, share a fire with him tonight. Your ancestors couldn't just slam a door and walk away. So, evolution built something else instead. A finely tuned radar for fairness, cheating, and social debt. Think about what actually annoys you about a bad neighbor today. It's rarely the noise itself. It's the sense that they don't care how it affects you. It's the feeling that they're taking more than their share of space, of quiet, of consideration. That feeling has a name in evolutionary psychology. Researchers call it free rider detection, and it may be one of the oldest social alarms your brain runs. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent years studying small-scale societies and found something almost universal. Groups don't just quietly resent a selfish member, they punish them. Gossip, mockery, public shaming. In extreme, repeated cases, even exile. Boehm called this reverse dominance, ordinary people banding together to keep any one person from taking too much or giving too little back. So when you glare at a neighbor's overflowing trash cans or mutter about their loud party at midnight, you're not being petty. You're running a 40,000-year-old enforcement program. One designed to keep small, interdependent groups fair enough to survive. Except now it fires in a world where you don't actually need this person to survive winter. It just feels like you do. There's a second layer to this, and it's even stranger. Gossip. You'd think of gossip as trivial, a modern guilty pleasure. But anthropologist Polly Wiesner recorded firelight conversations among the Juhuansi people of the Kalahari and found something revealing. A huge portion of nightly talk wasn't about hunting or the weather. It was about people. Who did what? Who wronged whom? Who could be trusted? That talk wasn't idle. It was infrastructure. In a world without written records, without police, without courts, gossip was the entire justice system. It tracked reputations across the whole group in real time. A bad neighbor couldn't hide behind a locked door. Word traveled. Reputation was currency, and everyone was always quietly checking the balance. Now look at your own life. The group chat where someone complains about a coworker. The neighborhood app where people post about the guy who never shovels his sidewalk. You didn't invent this. You inherited it. Your brain still runs the same background process, scanning nearby people for fairness, judging them, and quietly filing a report to share later. Doesn't that explain a lot about why complaining about neighbors feels so satisfying? But ancient neighbor conflict wasn't only social, it was also, quite literally, territorial. Even mobile hunter-gatherer bands maintained loose boundaries around water sources, foraging grounds, and hunting paths. Crossing into another group's territory uninvited wasn't a minor faux pas. It could trigger real hostility, sometimes violence. Your instinct to bristle when someone parks too close to your driveway or lets their yard creep toward yours is a faint echo of a much older, much higher stakes alarm. Space meant survival. A group that let its boundaries get walked over risked losing access to food and water it depended on. So brains that noticed intrusion early and reacted to it strongly had an advantage. That hypersensitivity didn't disappear just because modern boundaries are marked by fences instead of rivers. The wiring stayed. Only the stakes got smaller, even as the irritation stayed just as large. Here's the twist most people never consider. Ancient life wasn't actually more peaceful between neighbors. It was more resolved. Because reputation followed you everywhere in a small group, there was constant pressure to repair conflict, not just avoid it. You couldn't disappear into a crowd. You had to make peace, apologize, or trade a favor because tomorrow you'd be face to face with that same person again, hunting the same forest. Modern life removed that pressure. You can avoid a neighbor for years, never speak, never resolve anything. Just simmer quietly behind a fence line, feeding a grudge that would have been forced into resolution 10,000 years ago. In some strange way, your ancestors may have been better at neighborly conflict than you are, not because they were nicer, but because they had no choice but to work it out. There's also a mismatch in scale that makes everything worse today. Dunbar's number caps your brain's real social awareness around 150 people. But your actual neighborhood, your building, your city block, may contain hundreds or thousands of people your brain was never built to track. So you default to old shortcuts. You judge based on a single loud night, a single messy yard, a single bad interaction, because your brain doesn't have the bandwidth to build a fuller picture the way it once could in a tiny, lifelong band. That single data point becomes the whole verdict. One slammed door becomes that terrible neighbor. One dispute over a fence becomes years of cold silence. Your ancient social software is trying to run an entire justice system on a fraction of the information it evolved to expect. No wonder it glitches. So, what do you do with an instinct this old, running in a world this different? You can't switch it off. It's wired too deep. But you can recognize it for what it is. The next time a neighbor's noise sends a flash of irritation through you, that's not simply modern annoyance. That's an ancient alarm, built for tiny bands around a fire, firing inside a world of fences and drywall. Understanding where it comes from doesn't erase it. It just makes it a little easier to laugh at. Because somewhere, 40,000 years ago, someone was almost certainly annoyed at the neighboring shelter for staying up too late. And their brain built the very same alarm yours still carries today. Next time you catch yourself glaring at a fence line, remember, you're not overreacting to a neighbor. You're reenacting a survival strategy that outlived the world it was built for.